everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I will be reading the oldest and newest books on my physical TBR. I did another vlog similar to this a couple months ago where I read the highest and lowest rated books on my physical TBR, and I thought I would kind of do something similar, but obviously reading the oldest and the newest books that I have on my physical TBR. I don't feel like this vlog will be much of a reading challenge because there is really nothing to compare both books. One is older and one is newer. I don't think they'll be of the same genre because I do have a lot of books on my physical TBR that are old YA or just like older fiction, and a lot of my newer books are romances. So I don't think there will be much to compare. I guess I could just kind of compare if the older book still holds up today and if it feels outdated or not. But I just thought it would be fun to knock off an old book off my physical TBR and then knock off a new one. I do know which is my newest book because I obviously just recently bought it, but I'm not sure what my oldest one is, and I think I'm gonna do the oldest one that I've had on my TBR, not necessarily publication date old, just because it's been on my TBR for the longest. I want to get it off of my TBR, if that makes sense. I'm going to go on my Goodreads and put a screen recording here. So on my Goodreads, I have a shelf dedicated to all of my physical to-be-read books. So I'm going to find that list and we are going to look at that one. So if I sort it by date added, which would be the most recent to this list, is Ready or Not by Kara Bastone. So this is going to be the newest book I'm going to read because it's one of my newer purchases. And so I think if we just do reverse, it'll give me the oldest book, I think. Let me just look here. Yeah, because I don't want to do publication year because I have like some newer books that have been published for several years. Like I have some historical romances that have been published for a very long time, but those ones are not as old purchases as other books, if that makes sense. So yeah, we're just gonna do date added. So we'll do reverse. And oh, it'll be Abandon by Meg Cabot. I have had that book on my TBR for a very long time. So I grabbed both books. So we have the more recent purchase, Ready or Not by Kara Bastone, and then Abandon by Meg Cabot, which I think this is one of my first book outlet purchases back in the day. I might have even hauled this on my channel in the early days. I don't fully remember, but I know I've had this one for a while, so I'm excited to finally read this. So these will be the two books that I'm reading for this vlog. I'm very excited. I will try to keep this vlog as spoiler free as possible, but I will be talking about these books as I'm reading them and discussing some things out of context and maybe reading off some quotes, but it will be as spoiler free as I can get it. I decided to start with Abandon because this is YA and I'm not necessarily fully in the mood for YA. So I thought I would start with this one first. That way I can maybe end on a little bit of a higher note if I read the romance book last. However, I'm actually enjoying this. This is very different from what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be kind of like a paranormal romance, which, I mean, it kind of is, but it's a Hades and Persephone retelling. I also have a lot of books on my physical TBR that I read the summary once and I bought the book and I never really reread the summary, so I never remember what the book is about until I'm like actually reading it. And even then, sometimes I don't read the summary at all. I just read the book, but I'm gonna read the summary for you guys for Abandon. So, a near-death experience, a horrible incident at school, and a move from Connecticut to Florida have turned 17-year-old Pierce's life upside down. And when she needs him most, John Hayden is always there helping, but reminding her of her visit to the underworld. This book was published in 2011. I don't think I've read anything else by Meg Cabot before, so this is my first. I know that she is a very popular and well-loved author. I am currently 84 pages into this, and I am really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the writing style. It's very atmospheric, yet also simple and like easy to understand. There's a lot of mystery surrounding the characters and like what happened to her. I feel like right around the 60-page mark is kind of where you're finding out like what exactly happened to her. And very interesting, very, like I said, atmospheric. It has this element of just mystery and kind of like coziness, if that makes sense. There is no designated chapters, which is kind of weird, but there is like parts where a new section begins, I guess. And each part starts with a quote from Inferno by Dante, which is very interesting. And I love that little touch. I'm actually really enjoying this. I'm enjoying the story and the characters, and I don't really know what to expect. I do kind of like how the story is told with a like past and a present. It's kind of doing some flashbacks, but also staying in the present time, and I'm really liking how that is done for this book. I'm also very suspicious of Pierce's grandmother. There's something up with her. She knows something. And maybe also her mother. I feel like her mother must know something too. But yeah, I'm enjoying the setup of this story, and I am actually very interested to keep reading and to see what happens next. So I finished Abandon by Meg Cabot, and I think I'm going to give it like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy the story. I liked the mystery element. I like how it's kind of like an urban fantasy. I hate saying this, but I feel as if I'm a little too old for this book. Like obviously this is YA, so it is targeted towards teens, and I am not a teen, but I still do enjoy young adult stories. I just think this one is a little too young for me, and I definitely would have ate this up as a teenager for sure. I really liked Pierce. I thought she was a fantastic heroine. She did occasionally annoy me when she was just like constantly thinking about the same thing over and over again, but other than that, I really liked reading from her point of view and reading about her and everything that happened to her. Honestly, I really wasn't into John. I mean, it's a Hades and Persephone retelling. I guess the point is it's kind of like one-sided at the beginning, I guess, which makes sense, but I don't know. I wasn't really into John, and I wish that there was a little bit more angst between them. Any of their romantic interactions, I feel like could have been pushed to the second book, because I was honestly more into finding out what happened to Pierce. I mean, I was interested in like who John was and like what his problem is, but I actually cared about what was happening to Pierce. There are some cliffhangers a little bit from like multiple storylines, which has me very interested. I don't think I will continue this trilogy. I definitely wish I would have read this like years ago, because I could have seen myself continue the trilogy and like really enjoy the story, but I just didn't care enough to continue. But I did think it was really good and interesting. It did kind of feel like the cliche YA books that came out in like 2010 to 2014, but in a good way. Like, it wasn't bad. I think mainly because like the romance is not the main point or focus of the story. Like, it is obviously part of it, but it's mainly about Pierce and like what's going on with her. I really liked Pierce's parents. Her dad, even though he had faults, I liked him. I liked how he was like there for Pierce and like would do anything at the drop of a hat for her. I do feel like her mother didn't fully pay attention to her, but her mother wasn't super overbearing and like understood that Pierce needed space to deal with things and stuff, which I liked that her mom was understanding that. But I do feel like her mom needed to pay a little bit more attention to her, because she was just like out wandering the streets. I liked her cousin Alex. He was a little weird, but I liked him. And I liked her uncle. Her grandma was interesting. I don't want to say anything more about that. I like the random little storyline that we got with, wasn't it like Richard Smith, I think is his name? Yeah, Richard Smith. The, what is the word for it? He watches the cemetery. Like, he runs the cemetery. I liked that little like storyline connection thing that we got there. That was interesting. This book was super short. Like, it was 304 pages. So it was very quick and easy to read, and I enjoyed how kind of fast-paced it was. There wasn't a lot of dull moments. It was like there was always something happening, and each chapter was filled with important information. This is just like the type of book that doesn't need to be longer than it is, and I feel like the amount that we got was perfect for the story. I'm very happy that I finally read this and I finally got this off my physical TBR, and I'm happy that I held on to it for so many years, because it was entertaining and I did have fun reading it, and I was very engrossed in the story and I wanted to know what happened. It was just a fun, mysterious, urban fantasy young adult book, and I liked it. I did start Ready or Not last night, but before I discuss this, I kind of want to add a few more thoughts about Abandon. I feel like I didn't really explain how I felt about Pierce and John together. I just wished that there was more development between them. I felt like there wasn't much of a connection. I just wanted a little bit more angst and a little bit more just them kind of getting to know each other more, I guess, because I felt like there was just no development between them. I understand that they have known about each other for a very, very long time. It's the point of Hades and Persephone, like that is the point of the retelling. Like, Persephone doesn't love him at first, like it takes her a very long time to love him, so that makes sense for this, I guess. But I don't know, I didn't feel the chemistry between John and Pierce. It's also really hard to judge the first book in a series, because everything that was not tied up in this book will be answered hopefully in, you know, the second and third book. I'm not going to read those, so I will never know. So it's hard to judge this book just by itself, because there were so many unanswered questions, and I'm sure the development between Pierce and John probably gets better in the next two books. Even though I said I'm not reading the next ones, I am curious about the whole like coffin night thing and like what's up with that other friend group that Pierce kind of befriends a little bit. I definitely have so many unanswered questions and they're gonna stay unanswered. Now that I've slept on it, I think I'm going to give this 3 stars. I'm pretty sure I initially said 3.5, but I honestly feel like this is more just like a solid 3-star. Okay, back to Ready or Not by Kara Bastone. I am currently 119 pages in. I'm about to start chapter 9. This follows Eve, who ends up having a one-night stand and she gets pregnant, and she is just trying to deal with pregnancy and telling the father, who seems very like apprehensive, like he doesn't seem very into it. And her best friend's older brother Shep is suddenly kind of always around, helping her, listening to her. She's obviously just dealing with a lot, but I am really enjoying this. I feel like I didn't really explain it very well, but it's kind of straightforward. You know, she gets pregnant and now she's just dealing with pregnancy and how her life is about to change. I will say Eve's inner dialogue can be a little much sometimes. She kind of loves to ramble and just go on and on and on. But overall, I do enjoy her as a character, and I am enjoying Shep, and I'm also enjoying Ethan. He seems very sweet, but I feel like there's gonna be more to that later. Willa, I'm not really sure how I feel about her. She is obviously having her own issues and like dealing with her own things, which I imagine it's very, very hard for her. I just feel bad for Eve because I feel like Willa is not really there for her. And it seems like Eve always has to be the one to be like the bigger person and the one to step up more than Willa, and I hope that changes throughout this book. I am really interested to see things develop between Shep and Eve. I'm on page 240, about to start chapter 19 of Ready or Not, and I'm really, really loving it. I have less than 100 pages and it's definitely going to be a 4-star. I often feel very emotional while reading this. There's just like certain scenes that are very impactful, especially with like Eve and her family and her friends. There's a lot of talk about losing family members and losing parents, and anytime that is brought up in this book, it is very emotional. And considering, you know, Eve is having her own baby and she is looking at motherhood differently now that she is about to become a mother. I love the relationship that Eve has with her brothers, even though they're a lot older than her, and she doesn't really have like a real relationship with them, but we got to see a little bit of them at Christmas and I loved all of their interactions together. I am liking Willa a lot more now. I feel like she is warming up to me a little bit more, and I am loving Shep. He is just there for her at any moment, and he does things for her without her even asking. Like, he's just there to give her food or there to like massage her feet or like just other random stuff, and I'm obsessed with how slow their relationship is progressing. Now that I have less than 100 pages left, I feel like it's becoming more romance heavy, which I'm really loving. I think for the beginning, it makes total sense to have this whole setup of just Eve and her day-to-day life and her dealing with this huge change. And now having more of like a romantic element with Shep is just perfect for this book. And I feel like it's at the right time in the book and in Eve's like mental and emotional state. Like, she's ready, I guess, if that makes sense. Very much a true friends to lovers, which I'm enjoying. just finished Ready or Not by Kara Stone, and I loved it. I don't know if you could tell, but I definitely cried towards the end. Again, like I said, this book just made me feel so emotional. Just all of the life changes that Eve had to go through and her thought process, and I don't know, I just felt like I could relate in a way. I love Shep so much. Just his kindness and just like how much he was there for Eve. Their like love confessions, oh my god, I was so emotional. It was just so sweet, and just like they truly were friends, and they just had a very beautiful relationship. I also really liked Ethan. I thought he was great, and you know, he was going through a lot, and honestly the conversation that Eve had with Nurse, oh my god, what was her name? Nurse Louise, when they went out to coffee together, and Nurse Louise was explaining how self-centered you can be when it comes to pregnancy, because it is all about you, and then it's no longer about you, it's about your baby. And then you start looking at other children and you think about, you know, how they're all somebody's world, if that makes sense. And just that whole conversation that they had and the perspective that it gave Eve was just wonderful. And the way she was kinder to Willa and Ethan about the whole situation was just beautiful. And I don't know, I'm honestly thinking about giving this book 5 stars because I just really loved it. It did take me a while to get into it. Like, even though I was enjoying it in the beginning, I will say, I feel like towards maybe like the 200 page mark, I started to get more into it, and I just really loved the ending. I thought that was also very sweet. I feel like this book also had just the perfect pacing. It wasn't too fast paced, it wasn't too slow. I felt like the character development for all of the characters was at a perfect, realistic pace. I like also how the book was divided between Eve's trimesters. So we had like the first trimester and then the second and the third. I liked that little aspect. It kind of gave you an idea of the time frame between everything, because there's not really a lot of mention of like how much time has passed. So I liked that little touch to kind of separate the timeline. I just really appreciated Eve's journey and how she was so unsure about things in the beginning, and she kind of finally became this person who like knew what she wanted, and she was like very certain in things. And it just shows you that it takes time, and there are things that you have to deal with, there are things that you have to realize, and then you can slowly get to that point where you can grow and change and just figure things out better, if that makes sense. Probably not, but I really enjoyed this book, and I think I am going to give it a 5 star. It just really spoke to me, I guess. It's been a couple hours since I finished Ready or Not, and I don't really have much else to add about it, honestly. I'm pretty confident in giving it 5 stars. I was a little hesitant while I was writing my review in my reading journal, but I realized I had so many notes. I had to like actually type it out and then print it in here. And while I was doing all of that, I realized that it was for sure a 5-star read for me. I just loved this book so much. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Ashley Poston's writing. It also reminded me of something else, but I can't really think of it at the top of my head. I think I went into it not really having like super high expectations, but I did think I would enjoy it. And I just fell completely in love with the story and the characters, and I can low-key see myself rereading this in a couple years and annotating it, because there's definitely some things that I kind of wish I would have annotated. Like, honestly, I just really loved chapter 23. That was just like, I loved that whole chapter. I just loved this book so much. Like, I loved everything about it, which is so crazy because like I wasn't really vibing at the beginning. Like, it kind of took me a while to get into it, but by the end I was like completely sold on everything. The characters, the story, the romance, all of the little friendships that were happening. It was just so beautiful, and it is life-changing revelations in this heartfelt, slow burn friends to lovers romance. Like, that is what this book is. Oh, it also reminds me of Abby Jimenez's writing and her storytelling, where it's like not fully about the romance, but the romance is still there. So if you really like Ashley Poston or Abby Jimenez, I totally recommend this book. So I guess that's kind of it for this reading vlog. I'm happy I read both of these. Even though I didn't love Abandon, I'm really happy I got it off of my TBR. I also wanted to say that Abandon didn't feel super outdated. It didn't have any outdated references, possibly because it's more like urban fantasy, so it doesn't need to really rely on like modern day technology or modern day things, like trends and stuff. So this didn't really feel outdated or anything like that, which I really appreciated and enjoyed, because I think that's something that sucks about older books, is like sometimes there'll be a reference to something that happened in that year and it's just no longer relevant, and it kind of takes you out of the story for a minute. So I'm happy that that did not happen in this book. Obviously, it's very difficult to compare these books in any way, shape, or form. Not only are they completely different books, but they are different genres. It would be interesting to read like a current YA book and then an old YA book to see if there is much of a difference, or like reading a really old romance and a current like new romance. Maybe that is a challenge that I need to do in the future. I don't know. But I mainly just wanted an excuse to read an older and a newer book off of my physical TBR. And I'm happy that these two were the books that I read and enjoyed. Let me know if any of you have read these books and what you think about them. And if there is a challenge similar to this that you want me to do, let me know. I have so many other reading vlogs planned for the rest of the year, and I'm very excited. This was one on my list that I wanted to get done, and I am just very happy that I read both of these books. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to give it a like, subscribe, follow me on all my other social media, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!